The alarm cut through the station before I even opened my eyes. Red light bled across the ceiling of my quarters, and a voice announced a docking clamp failure on Bay 9. I was already pulling on my boots before my brain caught up with my hands. Bay 9 was where the Etheri transport pod was sitting, loaded with new arrivals, mostly families who had just crossed half a galaxy to reach somewhere safe. I ran through the corridor with my heart slamming against my ribs. Sparks were falling from a support strut near the docking ring, and the whole section groaned like something enormous was waking up angry. A group of station workers stood frozen near the control panel, shouting numbers at each other that did not add up to a solution fast enough. I did not stop to think about rank or protocol. I grabbed the emergency release lever and threw my whole weight into it. Metal screamed against metal. The clamp held for a moment, then gave way just enough to let the pod settle, instead of tearing loose into open space. I do not remember deciding to be brave. I only remember the fear that if I hesitated, an entire family would not make it through that door. When the shaking stopped, and the emergency lights turned back to a calm white, I stepped back and let the medical teams move in. Nobody thanked me. Nobody even looked at me for long. I was human, and humans had just come out of a war that the rest of the galaxy still whispered about. People were grateful I had helped, but they were also careful, the way you are careful around something that has proven it can break things. That day passed, and so did many after it. Life on the station settled into a routine of polite distance. I worked logistics, moving supplies between docking bays, keeping manifests straight, making sure nobody went hungry or cold. I was good at my job. I was not good at being noticed without also being feared. There was a small noodle stall near the central concourse run by a Etheri woman named Cheska. She had feathered ridges along her arms and quick, careful eyes. Every morning I stopped there for a bowl of something warm, and every morning she nodded at me with a kind of careful respect that never turned into warmth. I understood it. I did not blame her. I just noticed it. The way you notice a closed door you have stopped trying to open. Her daughter usually hid behind the counter when I came near, peeking out with wide eyes before disappearing again. I never pushed it. Children have good instincts, and I had learned not to test them. Then one ordinary morning, everything changed. I was walking toward the noodle stall with my mind on a supply report I still had to finish, half distracted, half tired. The concourse was busy with the usual mix of species moving between shops and gates. I heard fast footsteps before I understood what they meant. Cheska's daughter came sprinting straight toward me, her wings half open, chirping in a way that sounded like something between panic and relief. People around us stopped and stared. I froze completely, unsure whether she was running from danger or running toward something, unsure whether I was supposed to catch her or step aside. She did not stop. She collided into my legs and wrapped her small arms around me, as if she had been planning this moment for a very long time. I stood there stiffly, afraid to move, afraid that any wrong motion might frighten her or offend her mother. Cheska arrived a few seconds later, breathless, her antennae drooping low. I braced myself for an accusation, an apology I would somehow have to give, a misunderstanding I would have to untangle. Instead, she stopped a few steps away and looked at her daughter clinging to me with an expression I could not read. I knelt down slowly, keeping my hands where the child could see them, and let her hold on. She buried her face against my shoulder and made a soft, trembling sound, like something had finally settled inside her. Cheska's voice, when it came, was quiet enough that only I could hear it. "She has chosen you as her dad." I looked up at her, certain I had misunderstood. Cheska explained, her words careful and a little shaken. Among her people, a fledgling's first independent bonding choice was sacred. It was not something a parent arranged or encouraged. It came from the child alone, and once made, it could not be refused without deep insult to the child's instinct. Her daughter had never done this before, not once, not with anyone. I asked why me. Cheska's eyes softened, and for the first time since I had known her, she looked at me without any caution at all. She told me that Yathiri fledglings could sense something most adults had trained themselves to ignore. They could tell the difference between someone who carried danger and someone who carried safety, even before words or reputation got in the way. Her daughter had been aboard that transport pod months ago, the one I pulled back from the failing clamp. She had been newly hatched then, too small for anyone to notice her watching from inside her mother's carrying pouch. But she had seen the hands that reached in first. She had never forgotten the shape of them. I felt something tighten in my chest, not fear this time, but something closer to disbelief. All those months of polite distance, of careful nods and closed doors, and this small child had been carrying a memory of me the entire time, one that had nothing to do with the war, or the politics, or the uniforms people saw when they looked at humans. The concourse had gone quiet around us. Other species had stopped to watch, drawn by the sight of a Yathiri bonding choice happening in public. I could feel their eyes shifting from the child to me, then to each other, as if something they had assumed for a long time was being quietly rewritten in front of them. Cheska explained gently that the choice was not a legal or binding thing in the way humans might imagine. It did not make me a father in paperwork or obligation. It meant that her daughter now recognized me as a protector figure in her life, someone she could run to, someone the community would expect to show up when it mattered. It was a relationship built entirely on trust that a child had given freely, without anyone telling her to. I looked down at the small creature, still holding on to me, and felt the weight of that trust settle into something I had not expected to feel again after the war, something like being needed for a reason that had nothing to do with strength or victory. I told her, in the simplest words I could find, that I would be around. She lifted her head at that, her wide eyes blinking slowly, and made a soft sound that Cheska later told me was a sound of comfort, one fledglings made only when they felt completely safe. Word of what happened spread through the station faster than any official report ever could. Over the following weeks, I noticed small shifts everywhere I went. Shopkeepers who once kept their distance began greeting me by name. Parents who used to steer their children away from me started letting them walk a little closer. Nobody said it directly, but I understood the quiet thought moving through the station. If the youngest and most defenseless among them could feel safe near a human, then maybe the fear they had been carrying since the end of the war deserved a second look. I kept visiting the noodle stall every morning. Cheska's daughter started waiting for me at the counter instead of hiding behind it, and some mornings she would tell me small things about her day in her simple, careful words, and I would listen the way anyone listens to a child who trusts them completely. I never became her father in any legal sense, and I never tried to be more than what she had chosen me to be. But something had shifted, not just in her, but in the way an entire community began to see what humanity might actually be capable of, once the fighting was over. We had earned our place in the galaxy through a war nobody wanted to fight. But it was not the treaties or the victories that finally made people believe we deserved to be there. It was one small child, unafraid, running across a crowded concourse into open arms, choosing safety over fear before anyone had told her what to think. That, more than anything else, was the moment I understood what we had actually won.